Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Today's show full of 3-2. Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I'm excited to talk about basketball, but there's a lot of drama in the basketball world. You got the Timberwolves drama with their owners. You got the Timberwolves playoff drama. You got the Iowa Hawkeyes versus the LSU Tigers drama in women's college basketball. We'll talk about all that and much more coming up on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show. It's a snowy Tuesday in April. No, this is not April Fool's. That was yesterday. That's why I stay off social media during April Fool's, because I don't like dealing with stupid jokes. I saw there was a T. Higgins trade with Jamar Chase. April Fool's. Come on now. I saw the Baltimore Ravens text all their players that they were thinking about wearing gold pants this season, and some players fell for it, and some kind of like, this is April Fool's. So I stayed off of it, but no, it's not April Fool's. It is snowing in April in Minnesota. So I apologize to all the high school spring sport athletes. Your season might be delayed this season again for like the 20th time I've ever been in Minnesota. But again, I'm Ron Johnson. This is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. We got a loaded show for you today. Excited to talk about college basketball, women's college basketball specifically. We're going to hit on men's college basketball a little bit. We'll talk about our brackets. Mine is completely busted. My championship game was Duke in North Carolina. NC State took care of that for me and knocked Duke off. In a perfect world, I would love to see Duke lose. Normally, I'm against Duke, but this year, I had faith in Duke. Filipowski, Jared McCain, possible Timberwolves draft pick. And they took care of it all for me and knocked it off. But we're going to talk about all that. Caitlin Clark, she finally got over the hump, but she hasn't won a championship just yet. She did beat Angel Reese. So now her path is getting closer and closer to what everybody wants. And I'm going to talk about that because I think the referees had a little bit of bias in that game. I don't know if the plays I'm going to talk about would have changed the outcome, but I do say that these refs, a little bit weird in some of the things they did. But again, I'm Ron Johnson. This is Locked On Sports Minnesota. I want to thank everybody who continues to download, like, share, tell a friend that we're here. Let them know that the Ron Johnson Show exists and that Locked On Sports is here to stay. I also want to let you guys know that you can find us on Amazon Fire and Roku. You can also on YouTube 24/7. You can get all of our shows every day, 24/7, sports around the clock. So, as I bring my producer to the show, Sam Extremo, and everybody know, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I've talked about this leading up into spring break. I use the app. It's very simple. It's very easy. The tickets were right there on my phone. And I'm not going to lie. Putting them in my wallet, best decision ever. I got to the Bulls Stadium, went right to the tickets, scanned them one by one. Got in. No delay, no waiting, I can't find my tickets. I hope these are real tickets. They were real. I was in there. And the Bulls actually won. The Bulls actually won that game against the Pacers. They are 7 games ahead of 11th place, which means they're 9th. So if they can win 2 more games, and the Nets lose 2 more games, they're in the play-in game. So we're going to talk about that as well, while how important that win against the Timberwolves was and why the Timberwolves have to stop playing down to their opponent. But as I bring Sam Exner to my show, Sam, thanks for joining me today. I know it's snowing. Good thing we're inside and this is not an outdoor show. Maybe one day, though. Maybe one day we'll do an outdoor show if the weather ever holds up. I know I've done some segments outside. Not today. This is definitely an indoor day. But Sam, when you look at the Wolves, so I just kind of talked about the Wolves, and they beat the Nuggets because we talked about that with Michael Grady. What is it going to take for Anthony Edwards to quote unquote be MVP? Well, you got to have the number 1 seed most likely, And you got to show you're dominant. And he did that. He beat the Nuggets without Karl-Anthony Towns. So everybody's on notice. And then you lose to the Bulls. The Bulls, the 9th place team in the East. You lose to the Bulls. Now, I will say, when I was in Chicago, the Bulls did beat the Pacers. The Pacers
by a lot.
By a lot. The Pacers are a decent team, 43-33. They're 6th place. But they absolutely, like, watching the game live, Caruso, I don't know if LeBron gave him like the Midas touch and gave him that confidence, or he always had it. But I feel like LeBron always kind of takes on a guy and that guy becomes a guy. You look at Matthew Dellavedova, kind of got some extra career time with him because he's with LeBron. Now you look at this guy, Caruso, a little bit extra time. The newest guy is his guy who he has now, Austin Reeves. So LeBron seems to have like a little bit of a Midas touch. One, maybe it's like, hey, get me the ball. Two, when I'm in the post, they're going to double. You just knock down open shots. Caruso was knocking down shots. I will say the Pacers were making some dumb plays. But the fact that the Timberwolves lost to the Bulls, Sam, we'll start there.
Yep.
Is this a bad sign to play down to? And not to say the Bulls are a bad team. They're in the playoffs, but they're not a top 3 team in the East. If this was the Celtics, Bucks, or Cavs, even the Knicks, I'd be like, I get it. Good teams. But the Bulls are not on the caliber of the Timberwolves, and they couldn't beat them, but they beat the Nuggets. So does that give you any type of consternation when you think about these upcoming games with these and they still have to play the Nuggets again, but some of these other teams like the Hawks that aren't that good, the Rockets that aren't that good. Are you worried about how the Timberwolves are going to come out against those teams?
Yeah, well, specifically with the Bulls game, Jim Peterson was talking during the broadcast about how floored he was that the Bulls were under 500 because of how hard they played, because of how good they looked. They shot the lights out in the first 2.5 quarters or so, and then they got really hot in the fourth quarter in clutch time when they needed to. That game amounted to the Wolves not hitting enough shots, and that's where you miss Karl-Anthony Towns because he's so reliably about a 40% three-point shooter. You had too many shots coming from Jaden McDaniels late in that game. You needed someone else to provide some offense, and they just didn't have that spark. Now, it's their fault. Defensively, they kind of floated through the first half. They did not take the Bulls as seriously as they did the Nuggets 2 days before. And though they battled back and took the lead in the fourth quarter, they didn't have the horses to finish that game. So I think it's just more evidence, Ron, that Cat's pretty important to this playoff run. You're going to have off nights offensively, and he's somebody that can snap you out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it too. Like when Anthony Edwards doesn't have it, or because like Rudy Gobert scored 19. So, like other people are picking up the pieces. Nas Reed wasn't as on as he normally is. So yeah, Karl-Anthony Towns is much needed. Hopefully that first round, they can get out of that, because right now, being the 3rd seed, now again, they still have time, 8 games left. They're 1 game behind first place, so that's nothing. That's literally you just win and they lose, you're back in first place. So this is going to come down to the wire. This is definitely what the NBA wants. They want that Western Conference, like final few games, for people not to load management guys and sit back and not care. For the 1, 2, and 3, because I'm guessing the Timberwolves won't have a meltdown and the Clippers won't go on a run. They're going to be in the 1, 2, or 3 seed. So when you think about that, right now, they would play the Pelicans. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the Pelicans. I would honestly, and this is just me, Sam, I would honestly rather be the 3 than the 2 right now, because the 2 plays the Suns. And again, maybe I'm putting too much on Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, but I feel like those guys can turn it on like a microwave and just go. And eventually, if they get hot and get on the same page, it's pretty much over with. And so when I think about that, I would rather be the 3. Now, the problem is the Suns and the Kings are a half game apart. The Pelicans, 1 game from the Suns. So same with the 6, 7, and 8. The 1, 2, and 3 are about the same as the 6, 7, 8. The 4 and 5 are pretty much the only teams. The 4, 5, well, no, because the 5 is 1.5 games. Mavs and Suns. Like it's crazy how close this is. I think 4, because 4 is 4 games away from 3, and they're 2 games away from 5. So 4 is the only one who can breathe. Like the Clippers are the only team are like, we're either going to play the Mavs, the Pelicans, or the Suns. Like they can kind of relax and rest. But everybody else is like playing shuffleboard right now with where they're going to be. And so when you think about the Timberwolves right now, you look at the games they have coming up. The first one being the Rockets, a 38-36 team. a team that potentially is going to play hard because they still have a chance to be in the playoffs. When you think about this Timberwolves team, Sam, that's not the biggest story with the Timberwolves right now. And we're going to spend a little bit more time on this. We're probably going to talk about this in the second segment as well a little bit, and then jump into Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese.
Yeah.
But Sam, what happened with the Timberwolves ownership?
Yeah. So while you were in Chicago, you were going to Bulls-Pacers games. Timberwolves drama. So just to summarize it quickly, Glenn Taylor comes out on March 28th. He says the team is no longer for sale. A-Rod and Lori missed their payment window, and I'm going to keep the team. A-Rod and Lori fire back, and they do the media tour, and they say to everybody who will listen, no, we followed the protocol. We fulfilled our obligations. We have the money. We've submitted it for approval. We're waiting on the league to approve our payment, and we are entitled to a 90-day extension per the contract. So now there's a standoff, and it's probably going to go to mediation, and then maybe do a courtroom after that. I don't know exactly when or how that's going to get facilitated, but there is a battle. And A-Rod and Lori say they're in it for the long haul. They are going to fight tooth and nail to pry this team away from Glenn. They've called Glenn a traitor during this war of words. They're kind of burning the bridge. Glenn Taylor has barred them from talking to anybody on the team. It's a huge mess, and it's kind of casting a shadow over this late season Timberwolves run.
Whoa. So that's the one I just saw too. Like, despite the $1.5 billion promise, Alex Rodriguez not allowed to talk to Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves staff. And that to me is crazy. Like, how can you stop a grown-up? I get the business side of this, but you can't stop a grown-up from just having a conversation. It's Alex Rodriguez. Like, this is not some random, I mean, nothing against some of these other owners that we really don't know much about. What's the dude for the Clippers?
Steve Ballmer.
So yeah, so like I get if it was Steve Ballmer. They're like, hey man, like this is Alex Rodriguez. Now Mark Lowry, yeah, tell Mark Lowry don't talk to Anthony Edwards. But Alex Rodriguez, like, regardless of what happens with this sale, the dude is still quote unquote a major league Hall of Famer. I mean, we'll talk about, you know, all the performance enhancements later, but he's quote unquote a Hall of Famer, one of the best in baseball to ever do it. Dated J-Lo, that to me should put you up there. And you're gonna say no. Like, if I was Glenn Taylor and I was smart, and now I know this is dirty, but I would find a way to get Mark Lowry out and still want Alex Rodriguez on my team. Like, if you really want to keep the team, I don't think he really wants to keep the team, Sam. And here's why. If you look at the sale of a few other teams recently, you look at Michael Jordan selling the Charlotte Hornets and all this other stuff, $3 billion. Like, every team that sold in the time the Timberwolves were supposed to sell, they've doubled the amount. So that's where I think, like, the minute Glenn Taylor saw Charlotte sell, I think he already had this in his mind. Like, when you're rich and you could sit back and say, I could either take 1.5 billion now, or I can fight this and maybe up the price to 2 billion, or I can go ahead and do what these other teams are doing. I get 3 billion. Along with the fact that they are winning. Like, Glenn Taylor's thinking, like, this whole time I had this team, they were terrible. And now they're about to maybe win a championship or go to like, I want to be a part of this. I want this to be my legacy. I want to be a champion. Like, I've been a champion with the Lynx 4 times, I think, if I'm right. I want to be a champion in the NBA as well. Like, how many owners can say they want an NBA and a WNBA championship? Like, he wants that. So I think there's a double piece to this. One, he wants to be a winner because you want to attach yourself to winners. The marketing dollars from a winning program is going to go up, and he sees that. But also, the price is up. Yesterday's price, DJ Khaled said that all the time. Yesterday's price is not today's price. I think Fat Joe said it too. I think Fat Joe said it on the podcast. But yesterday's price is not today's price. Yesterday's price was 1.5 billion. That's not today's price. And I think that's what he's trying to do. He's like, he probably really doesn't want the team long term. He just wants the money, which I can't be mad at him. But I've seen a lot of articles, Sam, and one of the questions that was posed in one of them, and I'll ask you this one. Who should the fans side with in this? Should they be on Team Lowry or should they be on Team Taylor?
Yeah, so I saw that article, Jim Suhan in the Star Tribune. And I think that in the court of public opinion, Lori and A-Rod are the clear winners. They're the ones that people are rooting for. They're more sympathetic in this. Glenn has run the team poorly for 30 years. He's had his time. They want fresh blood, fresh energy, and it seems like Lori and A-Rod have provided that. Now, there is this little loophole, though, Ron. With new ownership, there is a push to grow the value of the team. That includes building a new arena. And there's always been this shroud of a threat that a new owner could come in and move the team from Minnesota if they don't get that arena. Glenn Taylor is committed to keeping the team in Minnesota, and he would not push as hard for that arena. A-Rod and Lori would. And while I don't think the league wants to move the team from Minnesota, they want to expand the league. They don't want to move teams around. That threat, if they can't get an arena built, would, I think that you would be more nervous with A-Rod and Lori than you would with Taylor. But there are a lot of other reasons why you'd want A-Rod and Lori running this thing, just based on their youth, their energy, their recruitment. I mean, they go out and they basically go get Tim Connolly to run the team. There are a lot of reasons why you'd want fresh blood in the organization. So I think I side with A-Rod and Lori, and I get why other people would as well.
Yeah, because A-Rod said that they can't talk to Tim Connolly. They couldn't get into the suite at the arena. There were certain places they couldn't even go in the arena. Like, they just had to sit in their seats. He said Glenn Taylor went full nuclear on this dispute now. And he said, and this is Rodriguez's quote, "It's now personal. We can be in this fight for 5 years, 10 years, whatever. We are not going to let this go." Lloyd further added by saying, "We will use every ounce of effort here to enforce the contract that Glenn broke." So that means time, capital, whatever means necessary. This is sad because in the middle of a season this good, this is the type of stuff that really tears apart a team, because it's like mom and dad fighting. So you don't have the same energy. You don't have the same, like, yeah, we just won this game. You don't have the same, is Glenn Taylor being in the stadium on one side. I think he sits behind the team sometimes. And
right next to the bench, next to the bench.
Yep. Okay, because I know I've seen him on TV. And then A-Rod and them are across the way. And so even that's weird. Like, are they going to have security? Like, it's just weird. Like, they don't cross paths. Like, Glenn Taylor wants to poke his chest back out. He wants to be the face. Because honestly, I don't think Glenn Taylor's ever been on TV a lot, period, like during the season for the Timberwolves. Well, this year, because they're winning and people are talking about them, Tim Connolly's bought up, A-Rod and Mark Lawyer bought up, and Glenn Taylor might have a little bit of jealousy in that too. Like, there might be a little bit of remorse and jealousy of, like, how come nobody's talking about me? How come I'm not shown courtside? How come they're not talking about me as the owner? Because we know that pops up. Like, when the Mavs were good and making runs, that's what Mark, what's his name? That's Cuban. When he was Cuban. Mark Cuban was all over TV, and he was already kind of famous, but he was getting famouser. If that's not a word. But you think about that. You think about those times with the Bulls, like, go way back to the Michael Jordan thing, and they talked about his ownership and his GM and all that stuff with the Bulls when they won 6 championships. Like, the front office gets a lot of pats on the back when they're good, and they get a lot of arrows when they're bad. And Glenn Taylor has taken a ton of arrows, ton of cheap, ton of you don't know how to sign free agents. You're screwing up a program, blah, blah. Mark Lawyer and A-Rod come in this year. All of a sudden, they are dynamite. And Glenn Taylor's a little bit jealous. Now, they said they held their obligations. They did what they had to do. We'll see what happens there. We went a little long on the first segment, though, and again, this is not over. We'll probably talk about this tomorrow on the basketball party as well.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think the fans do want to side with new ownership, because sometimes you need a new voice. Like, think about the Buccaneers with Tony Dungy. They were a good program. Nothing was wrong with them. Good team. Nothing changed. They bring in John Gruden, new voice. They win a Super Bowl. Now, what happened after that? John Gruden screwed it up. Like, I'm not saying long-term John Gruden was the answer, but it was a new voice, and it got him going in the right direction. That happens. Look at the Colts. The Colts, playoffs. Like, I talked when I went to coach for the Colts, that was the best story I'd ever been told, because his assistant was still there. and she was Tony Dungy's assistant. And I asked her, I said, when you guys were in the office, because where the media room is, and Sam, you've been to the Vikings, it's similar, like the media room, and then like you can see kind of like the front office, people can stand on the stairs if they wanted to top and watch, if they wanted to watch a presser, if they wanted to like view it on the TVs in the building. And same with the Colts. And this was old school Colts facility. So it was a little bit smaller, more like Winter Park. Like you remember Winter Park, how it was kind of small and the media room was right here. And then the coach's offices was like right down the hall. That's how the coach was. And I asked her, I said, when Jim Mora went full blown playoffs, I was like, what were y'all thinking? She said, literally, she went and got a box and she started packing her stuff because she said, there's no way we're going to survive. And she was right. He got fired. Some other people had to leave the building. But when Tony Dungy came in, he met her and he fell in love with her. He's like, oh, I love your personality, blah, blah. And so she got to stay. But she was like, when Jim Mora went full playoffs, she was like, I'm out of here. and so when you think about that, when you think about like playoffs and all this stuff, we don't know what direction this is going to go for the Timberwolves. And it could be very good, or it could be very bad. But I think the fans want a new voice. I think they need somebody new because Glenn Taylor probably for years was like, playoffs, signing Steph Curry. Why are we still worried about Steph Curry? Because you screwed it up. Not just you, but your team. And so as we move forward, and we thought we were going to have A-Rod and Lori, and maybe free agents would want to come because they would want to hang out at A-Rod's house. A-Rod's on, like, has Glenn Taylor ever done an Instagram reel or a TikTok? A-Rod was a man of the people. He was trying to do TikToks. He was doing Instagram reels. He was shoveling his snow. Like, and we know that was fake because the dude's hands, he didn't have gloves on. And you could see his hands were freezing after about 5 minutes of trying to shovel that snow. Because then he ran back in the house and he's like, oh, like, dummy, get a coat. Like, come on, man. You act like you ain't been in New York. You know, but he probably never had to shovel snow in his life. But again, coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show, we are going to for sure talk about this Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese battle. Iowa moves on. UConn also moves on. Juju Watkins. So you get UConn, Iowa? Like, this is what they wanted. This is what because USC, Iowa, I don't know if it would have had the same effect of Paige Beckers versus Caitlin Clark. They were teammates on Team USA U19. Now they get a chance to play against each other. Two of the best women in college. Paige was the woman. She was the first, like, Gatorade commercial, all the stuff. And now Caitlin Clark is the new sheriff in town, which Paige, I think, will get it back next year when Caitlin leaves. But we'll talk about all that and much more coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show, and we have a word from our sponsors.
Big news, big news. It's baseball season and Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Twins home opener on Thursday, 3:10 first pitch. Will it be snowing? I don't know. But if it is, it might be kind of a cool experience to get into Target Field using the Gametime app for Twins Guardians Thursday afternoon. Check out that last-minute deal feature. See how that works as the ticket or the prices go down as first pitch approaches. They got the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection in case it gets snowed out, and job loss protection, etc. I especially like that lowest price guarantee where they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find better tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Well, Sam, before I jump into the drama of LSU, Iowa, I don't know if you heard this story, Sam. Have you heard about Caitlin Clark and UConn, like their correlation?
Enlighten me. I don't think I do.
So Caitlin Clark, if you go back to the U19 days, her and Paige Beckers, guess where she wanted to go to school?
Probably, I would guess UConn. That's where all young ladies probably wanted to play basketball at that time.
So Paige Beckers was top. Caitlin Clark was top USA team as well. High school, U19, U18, U17. Gino Auriemma never boarded a flight to Iowa. He never stepped into the gym. He never visited her high school. He never even came to a game for her. He didn't even like consider her. He did see her play though with Paige in the USA games, but never felt like she was UConn material. To the point where her quote, "I love the UConn. I think they are the coolest place on the earth, but they never talk to my family. They never even talk to me, not once. In my bathroom at home in Des Moines, Iowa, I kept a character. It's me. I got it at an amusement park when I was young. It's me wearing a UConn uniform. I actually have that in my house wearing a UConn uniform. It was my dream." Well, now she gets to see Gino Auriemma face to face and just add to this movie. Because I feel like I've seen some movies about young girls playing football. I've seen some movies about young men playing basketball. Caitlin Clark might end up having a movie type. Now, I don't know if they would call it the Caitlin Clark story. Maybe they will. Or maybe it's just a movie that kind of depicts what she's been through. You know, growing up with brothers, playing boys basketball all the way up until like 6th grade. And then having to move to girls basketball because that's what they do in 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Like you can't keep playing with the boys. And so she moved on. But the fact that she played with boys, she was bigger, stronger, faster because she was used to getting pushed around by boys and having to run and move quicker. I love that idea, by the way. I did that with my daughter. She's a 3rd grader. She played with 3rd grade boys and she was just fine. So I'm kind of debating on next year for 4th grade, just leaving her with the boys for 4th and 5th grade so she can, you know, play a little faster, learn the spacing, take a couple bumps because she is bigger. She's taller and girls don't want to bump her because she is the taller of them. She's like Angel Reese out there. Or no, the other girl from South Carolina. Deladosa or something, or I forgot her name, but the girl that got kicked out of the LSU South Carolina game.
Okay.
Cardosa, that's it.
She's going pro, I saw. I think she declared for the
Cardosa.
draft.
She should.
Yeah.
Like, and she's from like the Dominican, I think, or somewhere, or she's from somewhere. So I know Dawn Staley, hey, like surprised her with her family because her family, you know, they're from a different country. So being able to come to the US isn't easy if you don't have like all your passports and you can't get off work and so on and so forth. It's not like an easy flight, like you're leaving from like Minneapolis to South Carolina. And so she was able to get her family there for the tournament. So I think that was a big one for her. But I remember the story though. She had planned on having them come, and then Cardoso couldn't even play in the first game because she had gotten suspended. So she was like, "Yeah, we flew all this way to watch you play, and then look what you did. Look what you did. You went and got suspended." But anyway, so you talk about Caitlin Clark, and she goes on and doesn't get to play for UConn. So this has been something she's been waiting for, like hoping. And I'm not saying the NCAA set this up. I'm not saying they didn't, though, because you could have easily put UConn as a 2 seed in a different bracket. You could have put them as a 3 seed on the other side. So maybe Iowa, UConn meets in the championship. But I know South Carolina, they didn't want South Carolina and Iowa having to run each other too soon. And I don't think they wanted UConn and South Carolina to run each other at all. They really wanted either LSU, Iowa, or UConn, or USC, if you think about it, to play South Carolina. Like they loaded up Iowa, North Carolina, or sorry, Iowa, South Carolina, or Iowa, UConn, USC. They loaded in LSU. They loaded this side up and then gave South Carolina, not saying an easy path, but we want you to play one of those 4. We want to make sure Dawn Staley's team gets to play one of you 4. And so they really just loaded it up. And they got what they wanted, though. They're going to get UConn, Iowa. And when you think about that, it's Paige Beckers versus Caitlin Clark now. A little bit not as like gasoline-ish as LSU, Iowa. And the reason I said this about LSU, Iowa, and I kind of teased it, the refs made some questionable calls. And I don't know if it would have mattered or not. But, I'm going to tweet this video out after the show. There's a play at the end where Angel Reese fouls out. I don't know if you've seen it yet. And I slowed it down. So when you guys see it on Twitter, it's 3 Ron Johnson on Twitter. I actually went slow-mo. I rewound it, headed forward. I used my app to like record it so it would do that. The girl with, so once you gather and grab the ball with two hands, if I take one step, you now have to be stationed. You can't keep moving as I'm moving and I'm going in my up motion to lay it up. That's the rules. You can't keep moving once I start my up motion. If you're steady, you have to stay, because that's why the Euro kind of became a big thing for guys like James Harden, Steph Curry, LeBron, even, because they realize like guys are going to try to take a charge on me once I get past my defender. The only way I'm going to get a clear basket is I'm going to make him think I'm going to lay it up on the right side, and then I'm a Euro to the other side of the basket. Well, Angel Reese doesn't have the Euro in her bag. That's not her move. Now, Angel or Paige, yes, I've seen her Euro in high school against Eden Prairie. The girl's good. Flau'jae Johnson, the girl for LSU, the guard. We saw her do it a couple times in the Sweet 16. She is nasty with the ball. Caitlin Clark, yeah, she can Euro. Juju Watkins, we've seen her Euro. Angel Reese, not so much. And so when you think about that, she went 1-2 and the girl stepped and then stepped again. Her foot was in the air. She stuck her hip out and hit Angel Reese. Should be an and one. They would have been down 6. They said charge. Angel Reese fouls out. Coach loses her mind. Angel Reese is quiet about it, walks off, blah, blah. At the end of the day, the game was too, like, it wasn't like close enough to think that like it's going to change it, but also with a 10-point lead, you can't just continue to give Iowa calls. But these refs are human, and that's what they do. So, Sam, in your opinion, do you think the NCAA or the refs maybe, because they are human beings, they've watched all of Angel Reese last year, all offseason, the you can't see me, the I got my ring, all that stuff. Do you think that took a little bit of insight? Because Angel Reese fouled out a lot this year. Like, she got a lot of calls that went against her this year. She does play undisciplined, though. I've watched a lot of the TV games. But do you think the refs kind of were human in some of these moments this year? Or at least in that game?
Sure. Yeah, I haven't watched enough of it to really tell you about sort of a trend or pattern. I saw a million people upset about the charge call, and I get it. I think that was probably a whiff. Could have brought him to within 7 with 1:45 to go. So I didn't see the entirety of this game either, but I know Caitlin Clark made 9 threes. So you can't say that Caitlin Clark was really getting calls and Angel Reese wasn't getting calls, because Clark was doing all her damage from 30 feet from the basket. I think I would just outshot them. I think I would just outplay them in the game. This wasn't the most consequential call of all time. So I don't have a great opinion on this. I watched the game in bits and pieces, and I saw Clark lighting it up from distance, and that's something that LSU just couldn't match. So when Clark is shooting it at that clip, I don't know how anybody beats Iowa.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, like, it was 45-45 in the third quarter. So it was a close game, and that's the only reason why I say, like it's close. You know, so like some of these calls, some of these fouls, some of these tic-tac, because, you know, like some of the times it is a little bit of tiredness. It's a little bit of the girls, you know, not having the energy to keep playing. But at the same time, like when I blame LSU's coach. When it's 45-45 and you got the game in your hand in the third quarter, I think it was like 9 minutes to go or something. And she hits that she hits a deep three, like the first deep three after you're tied up. I'm treating her like Calvin Johnson in the red zone. I don't know if you remember how like the Eagles and some of those teams treated him. They treated him like a gunner. They put 2 DBs, 2 corners on him and just said, look, I don't care. You could throw it to anybody else on this field. We're going to leave the quarterback open. Matthew Stafford, if you want to run, run. But we're going to take the spy. You're not spying the quarterback. Go cover Calvin Johnson. I would have gone 3-on-4 and played some kind of triangle zone.
Triangle 2.
Yep, the triangle 2. And I would have put 2. So I would have had one girl just chasing. And I would have used a freshman, sophomore. I would have used some bench girls that don't like play a lot, but you know, defensively they can run. And I would have just had one girl just follow her. Even when they're on offense, don't play offense. Just stand next to Caitlin Clark and keep her out the game. Like, keep her away from even the defensive part of this game.
Just run laps around the arc and make Clark run.
Yeah, like whoever she's guarding. Like, yeah, just make sure she's guarding somebody that you can force her to do something she doesn't want to do. Now, again, Iowa might have figured that out offensively, but defensively, I would have ran 2 at her. I would have had the triangle. And then I would have said, force one of the bigs to shoot free throw line jumpers. Like, they're not going to make them at the clip. If I'm a coach and I got my center for Iowa, specifically that team, because I've seen that girl play, because I watched the Big Ten a lot, and I watched them play the Gophers. I watched them in the Big Ten championship game. Make her shoot from the free throw line. And I watched the game against Nebraska. I think that was the championship game. Make her shoot from the free throw line. Like, make her shoot free throw extended jumpers. And like, make Caitlin Clark have to beat 2. Because even when they pick for Caitlin Clark, now you have 3 up there. I'm going to make sure I have 2 people on her at all times, so that the pick and roll, because they were giving her too much space. You can't give her space because she has a green light. Like, people joke, like, oh, you got to guard her from when you get off the bus. You don't have to do all that. But when she crosses half court, she's Steph Curry. You got to get up. Like, NBA teams do that to Steph. Like, I don't remember if you remember that. Like, in the hot Steph era, they would run 2 at Steph and just make him get rid of the ball. Like, they would make him take a bad shot, but they were not going to go one-on-one with Steph Curry on a pick and switch. Like, let Draymond get layups, because we can go layup for layup, but we can't go 3 for 3. And that's the problem. If you're going your 3-point, like, you're taking 2s and she's shooting 3s. Just give up a 2. Just say, hey, like, we'll give up a 2. You give up a 2. You are more likely to miss a 2 than we are. And you are more likely to miss a 2 than she is to miss a 3 in that game specifically. So I would have ran 2 at her, put a triangle behind it, and just say, when the ball's passed to somebody else, run out. And at the end of the day, if there's a girl with the ball that can shoot a jumper, leave the girl shooting a jumper. Don't ever leave the girl under the basket. Leave one under the basket. The other 2 run at the girl shooting. When she throws it across the court, rotate across, switch that. But 2 stay on Caitlin Clark. She would not have gotten the ball. Like, I would not let her get the ball with a clear look at the basket. I'm going to have 2 girls on her, so that she has to be frustrated and pissed off. But it is what it is. People got their money's worth. LSU loses to Iowa. I'm not going to talk about the Angel Reese presser, because she talked about the threatening and stuff, and I get it. There's one thing to say people were being mean to me because of how I treated the winning last year, but the death threats and some of that stuff, like, because I've seen it, like, I've seen some of the comments, and like, I get it. Like, she's a 21-year-old girl. Like, that is tough. Like, when you look at Twitter, that's why, like, I personally, if I was her, I would have stayed off social media, but it's tough because that's where your money's at. But, like, threatening her, calling her name, saying she's a thug, she's ghetto, she's like, that to me is like, I saw somebody comment like, oh, America won last night when Caitlin Clark won. Like, come on, man. Like, what are y'all doing right now? And so that's to me what I really get annoyed at, is when people take it too far. But Sam, when you see this women's basketball heading into UConn, Iowa, what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think that Paige was like so dominant in her own way. I think, Clark does everything masterfully. I think Beckers had even arguably more on her plate, though, in the UConn win against USC, against an opponent that was favored, against, a scorer that's kind of overshadowed her this year, and Beckers was dominant on both ends of the floor. So if UConn can win that game against Iowa, where I assume Iowa's going to be a fairly heavy favorite, Beckers is going to quickly, kind of get her fame back that she maybe lost for a minute because of Caitlin Clark. Either way, it's going to be a storybook for one of those 2 players. And odds are, Ron, that they'll face an undefeated South Carolina team in the championship. They could be 37-0. Or does NC State, Ron, do they do what Mankato did in basketball? Do they win the men's and the women's tournament? Because that could happen too. You've got NC State lurking there in both the men's and the women's.
Yeah, and I'm kind of annoyed I didn't pick NC State, because when they beat North Carolina, I did pick them to, win a game or 2, I think, in the bracket, but I didn't think they would do what they're doing now. And I'm kind of mad I didn't just, it's a $10 bet. My other one is just for fun. I wish I would have kind of just taken a flyer on a team, because every year you do get, like, FIU, I think was the team last year. You do get a couple teams every year that just, what was the other team where the coach left? They're from Brooklyn. And the white dude had the mustache, the big stash. Forgot that team, but they went on a run as well and were Cinderella. So every year you're going to get some of these teams. Valparaiso, the one year, I think that was the Shockers Wichita State did it one year, got Shaka Smart paid to go to a bigger school. So yeah, so every year you're going to get that. But at one point Gonzaga was that, and now they're just a powerhouse. But I remember when Dan Munson was at Gonzaga, he was able to do it. So yeah, it's one of those things where you always look back. Steve Fisher did it with San Diego State that one year. Like every year there's a team, and this year it's North Carolina State. So can the girls do it? I would love to see that. I would love to see NC State shock the world and just do it on the girls and the boys side. But again, it's going to be a fun weekend of basketball as well. But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Ekstrom. Coming up next, we got the Daily 3. That's 3 questions. It's been about a minute each today. We're going to do that after a word from our sponsors.
And we're presented today by FanDuel. The sports calendar, as it turns to April, is loaded up, and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on the action. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL. I've been eyeing up that Naz Reid 6th Man of the Year award odds, and he is suddenly almost the favorite. He's just behind the injured Malik Monk at plus 150. You could have got that for like plus 1,000 last week, Naz Reid, to be the 6th Man of the Year. Bet so much at FanDuel. It's every line, every game, every sport. FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Well, now it's time for the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Take it away.
Baseball, Ron. The Twins, they're 2-1. They played the Brewers today, but they lost their star, Royce Lewis, in the 3rd inning of the first game due to a quad injury. He's out at least a month, maybe more. They already have a pitcher, Anthony DeSclafani, out for the season before he even threw in a game. Are injuries going to plague the Twins again, Ron?
I'm not going to say plague, but injuries are part of sports. But it does feel like you look at, we joked about the Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, and karl-anthony Towns all getting hurt at some point this season. Last year you had Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels. You can talk about Kirk Cousins and his Achilles. You can go down the list of injuries. Maya Moore leaving the Lynx. Like there's all kinds of like bad luck. But Byron Buxton last year, I think, got hurt, like running. So it's one of those things. And I don't know. And it could be weather, like, being here in Minnesota, being down in Florida for a while, then coming back to Minnesota, then traveling to play, like, that could have something to do with it. I don't know if that is, because I know down like in Texas, that's why I like Texas and California. Like you look at the Texas relays, their high school sports, their players are always faster than everybody else in the world from a high school standpoint. So yeah, I'm not gonna say plague, but it just seems to have like a bad cloud that follows them.
It's every year. This time of year, it's like they can't get through the first series without having a guy go down. It's Buxton, it's Josh Donaldson. It's this year. It's Lewis. They've got a very fragile group of stars.
And he's out for the season?
Lewis is out for a month, and then they will reevaluate, which means it's probably 2 months. So it's a good chunk. It's probably a third of the season, I would guess. Next up, plaguing. How about the transfer portal plaguing the Gophers? The basketball team has lost 5 players to the transfer portal, most notably Farrell Payne, Joshua Ola-Joseph, and Braden Carrington. So the team that we were also hopeful about is starting to break up because of the transfer portal. How hard is it going to be for this program to build as long as the transfer portal is in play, Ron?
It's going to be hard. I mean, honestly, because it comes down to NIL. Whether it's real or not, guys are getting, little birdies are in their ear talking. People are always talking about like, oh, I want to go to a program. And sometimes it's not about money, sometimes about winning. But today's kid is so driven by instant gratification, because it started with this, where you can post something and you can instantly see how many people like you. Instantly. You never could do that before. Like when we used to get dressed, you remember this, Sam, as a kid, nobody could tell you whether your shoes or your clothes were nice or not besides your immediate friends at your school. Now the whole world can tell you back to school. Like, how many people, like, you never know if you're going to go viral. Like so many people with like 1,200 followers go viral just by like posting a picture or making a comment that blows up. It's instant gratification. Also in that same instance, it's instant like feedback of like, oh man, like I'm looking at Twitter, people saying how bad we are, and like I need to go to somewhere where I'm gonna win. And then they think it's greener on the other side, and then they end up somewhere worse than where they were. But that's the world we live in. It's gonna be tough until like the Gophers program just kind of really can lock down some of these in-state guys that are big time play. Like the guy number 23 for Purdue, he's from Wayzata, freshman, doesn't start, plays a lot for Purdue. Gonna have a chance to win it. Imagine if he had stayed with the Gophers. Imagine if he had went to the Gophers. Different team probably. And he starts for the Gophers. Like he's not starting for Purdue. He would have started for the Gophers. But it is what it is. So yeah, it's gonna be tough. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. How much can we pay Dane Danger to come over from Illinois? Because he hit the portal, and I think he's got a year left. Can we get Dane Danger to come home? Ron, Dinkytown Collective. Let's get on there right now. Let's donate.
The funny thing about Dane Danger, too, is him and Dawson Garcia were teammates in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade for AAU. So who knows? Maybe Dawson can hit up Dane.
That would be sweet. Last one. Give me your prediction, Ron. Wolves, Thunder, Nuggets, they're all a game apart. Wolves have 8 games left.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to win the West of those 3?
In my mind, I feel like the Thunder. Just because of who they have left. The Nuggets and the Timberwolves have to play each other. So that's going to be a little bit of just, they're going to knock each other down. But the Thunder, not say have a clear path, but I feel like the Thunder have the best chance to do it. And they're fully healthy. The Nuggets are healthy as well. So I think it's between the Nuggets and Thunder personally. I think the health of karl-anthony Towns, they for sure would have been the number 1 seed. But without it, they're going to sit back. I don't know. What do you think before we get out of here?
I take the Nuggets. I just think that it's going to be hard for the Wolves to win there again. So if the Nuggets win that game, it's going to be hard for the Wolves to catch them. I'm going to go Nuggets.
Well, make sure you guys catch us on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube 24/7 with our live stream. Your favorite Minnesota sports shows around the clock is Vikings, Wild, Wolves, Twins, Gophers, Lynx, college basketball. We have it all. Please check us out and let everybody know we're here. Thank you to the everydayers that continue to like, download, share, comment, and follow along with us on this glorious ride. April 25th, the draft, US Bank Stadium is coming up. So stick around for that too. We are going to have draft coverage leading all the way up to, and then also we're going to try to get some time with some of these draft picks. I know we had Thayer Thomas before. We've had some other Vikings. Blake Cashman is in the hopper. He's going to come talk to us on the Ron Johnson Show as well. So make sure you guys stick around for that. Have a great week.